if you love what you do, if you can find a passion to align yourself with, because the industry is this broad, from deeply, deeply technical to not deeply technical, there's a space for you. But just find that. Once you find that passion, it will literally exponentially increase your ability because you are going to thirst for it.
This is a Security Weekly production. Security Weekly is a resource of Cyber Risk Alliance.
The Cybersecurity Collaborative is proud to present CISO Stories. Each week, CISO Stories takes a deep dive on security leadership with one of the contributors to my latest book, the best-selling CISO Compass, Navigating Cybersecurity Leadership Challenges with Insights from Pioneers, as well as other top CISOs and industry security leaders. The Cybersecurity Collaborative is a unique membership community enabling cybersecurity leaders to work together in a trusted environment. To learn more, visit securityweekly.com/CSC or visit cyberleadersunite.com. I'm your host, Todd Fitzgerald, and this week we welcome Larry Whiteside Jr., co-founder and president of Cyversity and CISO of RegScale.
I sort of fell into it, but as I fell into it, I fell in love with it, right? For me, when I fell into it, I had no intention. I was in IT. I was a military officer, and I was responsible for IT at the base. They were introducing this thing called Defense in Depth. But as I dug into cyber, it really, for me, aligned to how I grew up, right? And I say this a little tongue in cheek, but when I think about it, it's about risk management, right? It was thinking of in a risk-based form of what is the least risky path to take. And it aligned to how I grew up, right? Which way was I going to walk to school? Which friends was I going to hang out with? Which park was I going to go play basketball at? And so that aligned when I started thinking about security, where I was a geek to begin with. But as it started thinking about, somebody trying to break into something, what are the mechanisms? How do I think about what are the ways that I stop them from breaking in? What are the avenues with which they can break in? Because growing up, my home was broken into a lot. And so there was just a lot of mindset that aligned to the way I thought. So when I fell into it, I began to fall in love with it for that reason.
Mm-hmm. Very, very interesting. I don't think I've had many guests that have compared this to their homes being broken into as a child and having that as the cybersecurity impetus.
Yeah, well, when you think about the aspect of your home being broken into, it's very unnerving, right? It's your personal space. You feel violated. When you take that same feeling to a corporation, when you take that same feeling to the customers that a company may serve, right? When their data gets stolen, what is that feeling that they have? And back then, right, I didn't even take it that deep. I take it that deep now, but even back then, it was just a mindset shift of how I viewed the world. Everything was based on looking at the world from a lens of risk, right? Everything I did, where I parked my car, right? Locking my car, not locking my car in certain neighborhoods. Everything I did was based on certain risk parameters that, because of how I grew up and where I grew up, I was always thinking about. So when it came to security, it just naturally fit. And so, which is why over my career, I've said for many, many times that for me, people who are good at security think a certain way. It's a mindset, right? When you capture and grasp the security mindset, you can be very successful in this career field, regardless of the path you take, because your mind is always thinking in that realm.
Mm-hmm. It takes me back to, I remember my children's mother was teaching in West Philadelphia, was doing an internship. And there was a kid that came out and he offered her for $2 a day, he would watch her car and make sure that nothing bad happened to it. So just a different area. So,
yep.
So today we're going to talk about from nothing to something and overcoming those hurdles in life. So kick us off. What do you mean by that?
So, a lot of people, when they think about the field of cybersecurity, and specifically when they think about someone becoming a CISO, they typically don't think of the path of how someone got there, right? They might, but they may not think of the origin, right? A lot of times, if you look at the field and the makeup of the field of cybersecurity, because it is largely dominated by white men, there are very few opportunities where there are people like me that are sharing their origin story. And if you look at people's origin story, it's hard to believe that someone can achieve certain things coming from certain places. And so I like to share that these things are possible because I've been told that it inspires people. And so I like to talk. I never anticipated being who I am today. It was the farthest thing from my thought, because growing up was just about survival. So, and when I say nothing to something, it's about being able to find that belief in yourself, being able to find your path and still achieve something despite where you started the race from. And I think a lot of time, especially in where we're at in society today, right, we talk about the hurdles and we talk about a lot of things, but there's not a lot of motivation for people sometimes. There's not a lot of motivation for people to get up out of bed every day, right? Finances, hurdles, different things are impacting so many people in so many different ways. We are starting to see the suicide rate go up in a measurable way right now. And so I realize that through a lot of prayer, that I think that part of my purpose is to inspire people and share some of the origins of where I came from, and that despite those origins, despite those hurdles, despite the things that were put in front of me through no fault of my own, I was still able to do something. And so when you sometimes hear the phrase, you become what you see. And I want to be someone that shows people that are coming from underserved communities, that are coming from hardships, that are coming from different things, that it's possible, right? It's possible to achieve your dreams. It's possible to go into something that you didn't necessarily see. But if you find a passion, like, you can remove all hurdles.
So tell us, because we talk a lot about this. I know you've done some amazing work with Cyversity as one of the co-founders of Cyversity, which is helping bring people from underrepresented communities into the fold in cybersecurity. Help educate the rest of us. What does it mean to come from this underrepresented community, and what are some of those challenges that you found yourself facing?
Yeah, so the reality is this: when you grow up in underserved communities, your motivation to achieve sometimes isn't there, because your local friends groups, the people that you interact with on a daily basis, the people that you see as examples and role models in your community are not ones who are demonstrating what society would call success, right? So, I grew up, food stamps was a thing. I know what food stamps are. I know how to use food stamps. Now it's an EBT card, right? So there are things that you experience as you grow up that if you look at it and you're trying to drive what does success look like, you don't really have a model for it. And so how can you create success for yourself if you don't have a model with which to follow? And so when you see a lot of people from underserved communities, the question is, well, why would they go do this, or why would they go do that, or why aren't they doing better? Because they don't have anything to model after. And the things that they do sometimes have to model after aren't necessarily positive things that one would in a normal society want someone to model after, right? You don't necessarily want someone to be a drug dealer. You don't necessarily want someone to be a pimp. You don't necessarily want someone, right, to be in certain classes of roles and jobs that from a societal standpoint aren't, as I call, being positive members of society. Right. And so it's having that model, having that ability. So like for me, and I love my mother. I love my parents. My dad was murdered when I was 20. Right. My dad sold drugs. He lived the lifestyle that did not mirror an image that I looked at as one I wanted to model. Right. But if I was trying to model success and I had nothing, I was going by that. That's likely what I could have chosen, right? Luckily, I had a mother who was a nurse, and then after nursing she got into started working for a bank, and so she always had a job, and she ended up getting into a school system, so she always had a job. But her words of affirmation were the things that continued to drive my sister and I, and so it propelled me. I told her that I was going to finish college in 4 years. So when I went to college, and to talk about hurdles, there's so many different things that become hurdles. College is a hurdle for a lot of people. Our field is one where college is not a necessary evil, so to speak, right? College is expensive. People come out of college with tons and tons of debt. Well, our field is one where college shouldn't be required. I know dozens upon dozens upon dozens of people who have come out with no college degree, went straight into cybersecurity, and have had a wonderful career. But we have these hurdles that get put in place from corporations, and through no fault of their own, they're just trying to create monikers that resemble the pay scales, and I'll get into that more later.
How did you get into college, and what was your impetus that made you want to choose that path?
Yeah, so for me, college was not going to college wasn't an option. My mother said, "You're going to go to college, period, point blank." And I was one.
And when mother says do that, there's 100%. No discussion, right?
Right, 100%. But luckily, I was good at basketball, so I was good at sports, right? Because in many underserved communities, your way out is sports, right? But the difference for me was I did not have NBA dreams. My goal was a college degree. I told mom I was going to go to college. I went to college. I told mom I was going to graduate in 4 years. And my senior year, because I told her I was going to graduate in 4 years, and I didn't have an advisor, I didn't have a role model, I didn't have somebody that I was looking up to, my first 3 years, I screwed around and didn't take enough hours to graduate in 4 years. So starting my senior year, I needed 45 hours to graduate, right? So you know what I did? I took 23 hours and I took 22 hours, respectively, the first and second semester, because I told mom I was going to graduate in 4 years, right? And so, but then after that, I had no plan. I had done what I said I was going to do. I had no role model. I had nobody that was telling me or showing me what to do. And if it was not for my grandfather, and I say I had no role model, I'll preface this a little bit. My grandfather was a Tuskegee Airman, right? And so God rest his soul, he was a great role model if I knew him intimately, if I understood what being a Tuskegee Airman was, right? But growing up, I didn't. The only thing I knew about my grandfather was he and my dad didn't have a great relationship. So I didn't really have a great relationship with my grandfather. So I did not know or respect or have the reverence for who he was and what he had accomplished until I graduated from college. And he came to me and he's like, and they called me Baby Larry, even though my dad's only 6'1" and I'm 6'6". I'm still Baby Larry. But one of the things he told me was, hey, go into the military. I'm like, Grandpa, I have zero interest in the military. I have zero. I've got my college degree. I'm trying to figure out what I want to do. He's like, listen, that technology thing is going to die off. And this is a quote, that technology thing is going to go away. They're always going to need pilots. Just go into the military. So to appease him, I went and talked with a recruiter, only to find out that they had technical skill set roles as an officer. And I was like, oh, okay, that's interesting.
You're in the Air Force, right?
Yes, I was in the Air Force. So I ended up going to officer training school.
Thank you for your service. And I know the Air Force has phenomenal training in cyber.
They do. Well, cyber didn't exist, right? So when I got in, right, I went in under a career field that was technically what they call a communication officer, but technology fell with underneath that, within that field. And so I went in. But luckily, again, so my life is led by faith, and I don't think anything happens by chance. I think that God sort of, if you allow him and you don't, right, try and lean on your own understanding, that you will get moved into the places that you sort of need to get moved. And sometimes you're going to get taught a lesson because you're doing things that, you think you should be doing. But I ended up getting put into a role where I was the head of what was called the Base Network Control Center. And so that was a new sort of role and a new model that had been created. And I didn't understand technology extremely, extremely well. I had a computer science degree. I knew how to code, But I also realized through an internship that I had while I was in college that coding was not something I wanted to do for my life because it was I was working on monochrome screens for 12 hours a day with, the white cups of coffee at the bottom was so black just because there was so much coffee residue in it. So it was not something that I really enjoyed. So I ended up doing that. And as part of that, I learned about this whole defense in depth concept, right? I learned about firewalls, right? And I was like, it was extremely interesting. And so that sort of sparked the passion in me where I thought, I'm in this IT field. I'm just going to be an IT guy. I'm a leader. I'll be a project manager of some sort or whatever. But it sparked this thing about security. And so security sort of became my passion. At one point, I had 26 servers in my basement at one time, from Sun to the different versions of Linux and Windows and everything back in the late 90s and early 2000s. And it just continued to fuel me, which is why I use the word passion a lot. I tell people a lot, in today's market, cybersecurity is so broad. Do not go into any area of cybersecurity for the pay, right? Because you're going to get burnt out. There are just as many people joining, right, the field of cybersecurity as there are that are starting to burn out because they are just tired. There's tireless hours. There's so much work to be done. We're understaffed. We're underskilled in every way possible, right? And our attackers are getting smarter than we are, have more resources than we do, and the threats are growing exponentially. So with that, if you love what you do, if you can find a passion to align yourself with, because the industry is this broad, from deeply, deeply technical to not deeply technical, there's a space for you. But just find that. Once you find that passion, it will literally exponentially increase your ability because you are going to thirst for it, right? And so I was able to do that. Early on, I was deeply, deeply passionate about the technical side, and now I've transitioned. After being in a CISO position for so many, many years, right now, risk management. My passion is risk management because there's so many things that we as practitioners have to deal with on a daily basis that we've got to prioritize, right? Who's on first and what's on third to try and make sure that we're doing our jobs properly. And so
sorry to interrupt, but what would you say to somebody that's new, that's entering this field, that, particularly from an underrepresented community, and, now they have their degree or they've got some schooling in cybersecurity, but they look at this and they say, I don't know where to start. I don't know what to do. I'd like to be a CISO someday, but nobody's going to hire me to be a CISO today. So
right.
How did they get started?
Yeah, so it's funny. So first I'll start with this part. So everybody says they want to be a CISO. And then when I ask them why, probably 40% of them can explain it, right? So I tell people to start here. Find your community. What does that mean? Find your community means find those people that you can connect with and share and collaborate with. I've learned far more from my peers and friends that I've made in this community than any training class I've ever taken. Because we share, we all have similar experiences that but we look at them from maybe a different lens. And so when you begin to dialogue and communicate with your community across this industry, and your community can be local, your community can be global, it can be diverse, it can be not diverse, people that look like you and come from your background, or it could be extremely diverse. Whatever your community is that you build, find it and share and listen. When I say share and listen, that means share your experiences and listen to theirs and take it in, because a lot of people are dealing with a lot of the same things, but because they look at it from a slightly different lens based on their experience, background, their passion, where they're aligned, they're going to see it, talk about it, and share it differently, and they're getting something different from it. So when you connect with the community and you begin to have those conversations, you will begin to open up your lens and see, oh, I never thought about that problem in that way because that's not my lens. So now that I'm thinking about that problem in that way, I've learned a new way to solve something that I wouldn't have known before.
The article this podcast is based upon can be viewed in the best-selling cybersecurity leadership book, CISO Compass, Navigating Cybersecurity Leadership Challenges with Insights from Pioneers. You're speaking to the choir here. When I wrote the CISO Compass book 4 years ago, I invited 75 other top CISOs and industry leaders to contribute to that book, because it needed to be something that had those different experiences. I clearly don't have experience in every single one of those disciplines that a CISO runs, even though I've been a CISO for a long time. And the Cybersecurity Collaborative does the same thing. That's why we do what we do. We bring CISOs together to create artifacts for the teams that are done by CISOs, by people that have those different experiences. And one of our executive committee members, Ron Green, had made who's the CISO for MasterCard, had made a comment once that he said, I don't want to hire just people from inside my company, say we're talking about vulnerability management, because I'm going to get everybody that's worked here for the last 10, 15 years we're not going to come up with those new ideas. I want to hear 10 different ways that other people have done it at other organizations. And I think we see example after example that way of that collaboration. So
it's important.
So as we have, people that are moving into this field, and you touched on that, we tend to require these college degrees, which I'm in full agreement with you. Maybe at some point a college degree is good for somebody, but, we're also talking, we have a kind of a different model. If we're in an underrepresented community, there may not be the funds there to get that college degree. What if we flip that model around and say, let's get some training, let's get some experience to be able to make a good living. And then while you're making that good living, go back to college and pick up that degree.
So here's the reality. What we've lost is that both college and certifications were built to determine aptitude. Neither of them create skills specific to the job that people are going into, right? They don't. Right? So if our goal is to measure a person's aptitude for a role that we want them to take, then let's do that. So let's actually create a mechanism. And there are tons of tests and things out there that will measure a person's aptitude and their ability to grasp concepts and capture skills and things of that nature. Because then once you do that, then you can determine, okay, this person is a good fit for this and not a good fit for this, right? It's the aptitude piece. But what we've done is we've created these barriers, not realizing that the financial component tied to those barriers becomes an immediate slash for a large portion of people, and which is why we only get a certain portion of people applying to and coming into roles, right? And on the reality is, in corporations, a lot of the determination of there needing to be a degree has to do with money. When they look at salary bands across an organization, and they look in business unit A, B, and C, and those salary bands at 125K, we'll take an arbitrary number, all require a bachelor's degree in this particular business unit. Well, they tend to apply that holistically across that entire band. Well, in cybersecurity, we do know that 125K, a SOC analyst could be making 125K. Does a SOC analyst really need a 4-year degree to be competent? Not really, right? And so we got to figure out what that balance is, figure out what's the reality of what are the skills that we need, what are the prerequisites that we need for roles to have. And cyber leaders have to stand up and take some accountability and really work with HR in their organization to begin to create real roles with real prerequisites and requirements for the roles they're trying to fill.
So if you were going to our CISOs tomorrow and said, here's what you should be doing in your organization to expand our skill set, because we're obviously short people. I think 3.5 million security jobs open. That What is it that CISOs should be doing today to help be part of the solution versus being part of the existing problem?
Yeah, so there's a couple of things. Number one, create a great relationship with HR and set the standard. When I say set the standard is, as a CISO, you as an individual drive the standard for what jobs look like in your organization, period, point blank. You are the one that can go to the head of HR and say, listen, I need to hire, here's my skill set requirements for each of the levels, right? If I'm an EVP, right, or SVP or whatever, what's the next level requirements? Here they are, right? Across the board. Here's my next level requirements across the board, and build that tiered structure model. You can't go in there expecting HR to hand it to you. They don't necessarily always know. And so you may be living and dying on not getting talent based on a structure or a conversation that's just never been had. So HR is going off their own understanding.
Is there a resource that you would?
I wish there was. There's not, and there's no cookie cutter, right? It's every organization's got to figure out what works for them, because everybody, you're in financial services, the levels vary greatly. Right? You could be a VP, but you could be, 10 layers down. So every organization has to figure that out for themselves based on their organizational structure, right? But it's a conversation that needs to happen, and it needs to start. And so even if you're replacing another well-known CISO, you can't assume that they did it properly. You need to at least go in and take a look at it and say, what's my hiring structure? What does this look like? What are the requirements for each level? And get an understanding of what that is. It may be in place. It may be that somebody tried to have it before and they couldn't get the ball across the finish line, right? But maybe you are the person that can take it the next level and get it across the finish line. But the conversation has to be there, and it has to start with whoever the head of security is, right? And in many cases, if you have that conversation as part of your hiring process, if you have that conversation with your CEO and so forth, it's a lot easier conversation when you approach the head of HR with it, right? Sure. The next piece is, and probably just as important, is you need to find better sourcing, right? I can't tell you how many countless organizations who literally say, you know what, we're hiring differently now. And I say, okay, well, what are you doing to hire differently? And they're like, oh, well, we post a job out there and we say, highly diverse candidates, highly desired, right? And they may change some of the requirements. I'm like, but you're posting it in the same places? So how's that working out for you? They say, well, yeah, we're waiting a long time and we're still only getting a few. I said, because you're doing the same thing, expecting different results. So find new mechanisms of sourcing, right? Whether it's talent partners, right? If you've got outside talent partners, talk to them about where they're pulling their candidate pools from, right? Get metrics from them on the diversity of their candidate pools. If they can't show you metrics around the diversity of their candidate pool, then go find another a talent partner. If you're doing this from insourcing, where you've got a talent team inside and you haven't outsourced that, then your talent team needs to be looking at different places that they can go push their jobs. You can't just continue to think that pushing it to Indeed and pushing it to Monster or Google, whatever the places are nowadays, right? And think that's where you've always been pushing, that's going to be it, right? Partner with some HBCUs, partner with local universities, partner with local organizations, local community groups. These things exist out there that you can go partner with, but you can't just continue to post jobs and change a couple of words and think that, right, oh, we should now just get this influx of people. It's just not going to happen.
Yeah. That's great advice. This has been a great discussion, Larry. And what last advice would you give to emerging CISOs, current CISOs, experienced CISOs as they go down this journey to help get the right talent that we need, and also to get to a diverse workforce?
Yeah, so there's a couple of things. So one, and this is sort of a little bit askew, but something I like to say to all CISOs. I've been having a lot of dialogue around imposter syndrome here over the last year. And I did not realize how amongst my peer of CISOs who've been in this, right? I've been a CISO for over 20 plus years. I've been in the field for 30. I didn't realize how much this exists. So if you're a CISO and you are experiencing imposter syndrome going into your first role or in the roles that you have had, you're not alone. There are many of us that still continue to experience it. There are many of us that are experiencing it. So it's a thing. You can go look. There's a lot of resources on imposter syndrome. I gave a talk about it. So that's one. If you're experiencing it, it's okay, right? But besides that, CISOs have to own this problem because the practitioners at the lower level can't. We are in the driver's seat in our organizations. We are the ones who have to go to those organizations and make sure that they understand that it's a problem, that they understand our desire, right, to do so. They have to understand why we want to do it, right? And know your why. You have to be able to articulate your why, right? When I've had the conversation sometimes, honestly, the beginning of the conversation where I didn't state my why, through the conversation, I realized that they thought I wanted a diverse team just because I wanted to hire more people of color, right? And though I do want to hire more people of color, I do want people from underserved backgrounds, that's not my why. My why is because, similar to me, coming in with a different lens based on how I grew up, hiring people from diverse backgrounds means you're getting people who are coming in looking at problems very differently. Because each of them having unique and different backgrounds makes them look at the world differently. So when they look at problem solving, they're each looking at it very uniquely based on their own lens. That's the importance of diversity, so that we can solve problems better and faster. Because if we don't continue to speed up, and we know automation is a part of that, automation is extremely important to enabling us to speed up. But at the end of the day, there's still a human. There's still a human who's going to have to make a decision. And that human needs to be looking at that from a broader lens than some myopic view. So if that person comes from a diverse background or is in a diverse team where they, through conversations and creating their community, they've created this broader lens than the one that they walked in with, it gives them the ability to see the problem in a different way than they may have seen it before. Mm-hmm. And so that's the reason. So everybody, when you're talking about diversity in your teams, have your why.
I think that's great advice. Great place to leave it, Larry. Thanks so much for taking the time. This is such an important thing that we need to be working on as CISOs. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Visit more CISO Stories podcasts on securityweekly.com, where you will find an index to prior episodes. The Cybersecurity Collaborative is a unique membership community enabling cybersecurity leaders to work together in a trusted environment. To learn more, visit securityweekly.com/CSC or visit cyberleadersunite.com.